Well, as far as I could remember, my parents raised me to take care of people less fortunate than myself. And in 2013, I was told of the conflict in Syria by a Syrian American woman. And she told me that they were fighting for the right to vote, to speak, to live freely under a dictatorship. And I felt deeply called to go and serve in some way.
And so, what was the first step?
Well, I was helping fundraise. It was very small grassroots. And in the midst of fundraising, a college friend of my sister's actually reached out to me, hearing of what I was doing, and said that if I went to Turkey myself, he'd give me $2,000 cash. So I started my first blog. I had to let my parents know what I was doing, and started fundraising. And about 3 weeks later, I was off to Turkey. I was fortunate enough to be traveling with a Syrian American, so she spoke Arabic. I did not. And we had a rough contact in Gaziantep, which is a city south of Istanbul. So Gaziantep was my first place, and I actually went to a hospital there. And in this hospital, which in the first slide you'll see, is tons of Syrian refugees injured from missiles, bombs, and you name it. It was my first experience of what a revolution or war would look like. This young boy actually was playing in a playground inside of Syria with his siblings, 4 others, including him, so 5, and they all were killed except him. He hasn't spoken a word since that day, and I was interacting with him. And at this point, I didn't know that I was going to feel called to go actually inside Syria. We saw that they were getting taken care of enough, so we decided, more so I did, to get on a bus to go further south to a small town called Reyhaniye. It's on the Syrian-Turkish border. And on our way down there, I just Googled an NGO looking for someone or anyone, and was fortunate to find one, had them tell us how to get there from the bus stop, made it into their office, and I had no idea that I was going to say, "Can you get me inside of Syria? I want to go inside." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I want to see it for myself." The only way they can get us in was to drive us close to the border. We had to go kind of off skirts. So we were dropped off and we had to walk. And he's like, "There will be a car on the other side." We're like, okay. So the next photo is my friend and I about to just literally walk away from the only people we know. And we're going to go wait for a car. And we have to walk about 15 minutes inside of Syria. And we traveled inside. When that first car picked us up, we went about 2 hours inside, way past the refugee camps. In the next shot, you'll see I kind of snuck away and took a photo of myself. That's me, and the background is actually refugee camps. And I was already feeling nervous because I'd only heard of the refugee camps. I hadn't gone past that point. So I was already a bit away from that space. By the time we arrived into this village, it was in the south of Idlib. I couldn't tell you exactly where because it was pitch dark. And we were welcomed into this home. It's not our standard of a home. It's just like cement walls in a room. And then the first thing I was asked, and Nesreen turns to me and they're like, "They're talking to you." And I'm like, "What are they saying?" "They want to know why you're here." And so then I said, "Because I want to help." And they said, "Well, why? You're not Syrian. You're not Muslim. Are you a photographer?" "No." "Are you a journalist?" "No." "Do you work for someone?" "No, I don't have a job right now." And then they're just looking at me very suspicious. And I said, "I'm just here to help. Isn't there a need?" And they're like, "Sure, but why?" And I mean, this for me was just like confusing. I'm like, here I am ready to help, and they're just like resisting me, which, for me, I was confused. They were confused. Everyone was confused. Long story short, I just said, if this was happening in my home, I hope someone would show up. And they asked me what I wanted to do, and I asked them the next day to take me to the town so I can convert money. And they said, "You have money?" And I said, "Yes, I do. I just didn't want to tell anyone because I don't want to get hurt." And they're like, no, we'll take care of you. You're going to help our people." One of the first things I saw the next day was a bombed mosque. And still at this point, the bombs are going off. That night I didn't sleep at all. Just laid there wondering what I was doing inside a country that's having a war going on. But I was told that we needed to go to the town so that we can exchange the US dollars into Syrian pounds. I exchanged the US dollars, 15,000, into Syrian pounds, which is like, US dollars is like about that much. Syrian pounds was about like 3 bags. So we had a couple men come and grab it like as if it was like a food bag, so it wouldn't be obvious. And then we went and bought food in bulk. And the idea was to buy food in bulk and hand make food bags, then distribute it to people in the surrounding villages. So on the next slide, you'll see some of the food that was bought. We had to rent a car to put all the food in a truck. So we packed up the car, we went back to the village. By the next day, we were hand-making food bags. This whole village got together. They all helped me make food bags, and then on the second day, we went to distribute it to further villages outside of that area. And while we were distributing, every time I saw kids, because I couldn't communicate, I would find my way of communicating by playing with the kids. And this was one of the first group of kids I was playing with, and discovered that they never knew what Play-Doh was. Their eyes were like lit up. So imagine for me, like I'm hearing bombs in the background, haven't showered, it's been a rough couple days, and then here I am, these kids are looking at me like I just gave them gold, you know? They would cling on to me when I would leave. So we went to a couple of villages distributing food. And this is on the third day. We heard of a really bad area that hadn't had any aid for a long time. I don't remember how long, but it had to be months. And there's tons of children there, and they not only needed food, but also baby milk. I ended up getting off this truck. We still need to make more food bags, and the promise between Nesreen and I, the girl in the gray hijab, was not to separate because I don't speak any Arabic. But I felt called to stay. So I stayed back, I jumped off, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "You go, I'll keep making food bags. By the time you come, we can go 3 other places before it gets dark." And she's like, "We're not supposed to separate." And I'm like, "It's okay. I don't need to talk to anyone. I don't need to learn how to say anything. I just bag the food." So she left. When Nesreen and I split up that day, and I was bagging the food bag, a bomb fell in the village I was in. I would say at the end of this parking lot. The windows shattered in the room I was in. And when I walked out of that space to go to like a safe space, that's when I really saw like what it was like to be in a war. I saw disarray, dismangled bodies, blood, gore, you name it. And hours later, when Nesreen came back, she thought I was dead. I thought I was dead. We were rushed to leave. So 6 hours later, we're crossing back into the border. My whole life changed. It was in that moment when I came out of that room that I knew that I needed to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be in those spaces where no one would want to go, because there's more life there than anywhere else in the world, in my opinion. I'm not going to get emotional, but I got back to the States after that moment.
Get emotional.
I do that a lot,
that's
though.
how we got here.
Okay. Went back to the States, started my own non-for-profit For the Unseen. The mission is to create sustainable solutions for people in unseen areas, primarily developing countries.
And that's why the name For the Unseen.
And
but here's where it really kicks into an organization, a movement, and action that produces results.